Sorry, muted. Sorry about that. Yeah, today's talk is about acceptance. So let me start again. Welcome to Let's Coach 2023. I'm Liz Cresci, Strategic Growth Coach. For those of you that are new, Let's Coach 2023 is brought to you by Life Coach University. Check us out at lifecoachuniversity.com. We have these sessions almost every day, sometimes twice. And we have some great hour-long, what we call PIF talks or pay it forward talks. But these sessions are about you. So feel free to jump into the conversation, use your Q&A or raise your hand if you want to talk voice to voice. I do keep everything anonymous. And, we're just here. I'm here to help. So I thought we would get started today and talk about acceptance. If you've followed anything that I've done or you've been on any of these sessions, you know I'm a huge proponent of change and strategically and growing yourself, because you cannot have growth without change, but you can have change without growth, right? So I'm all for the growth and the change. And sometimes it's just about feeling stuck or feeling like there's more, or if you haven't heard this story before, what got me into this was a postcard, right? I went to my mailbox. I was waiting for the bus with my kids who were little at the time. And there was this terrible little postcard that was the invitation to my 20th high school reunion. This was a while ago. And I realized in that moment, it was like everything kind of went dark. And 20 years had passed, and what did I have to show for it? I wasn't anywhere close to where I thought I would be. My life was a series of reactions to whatever came my way. And I wasn't aware that I had the control. And I don't think that I'm alone in that. I've had numerous conversations with people over the last 20, 30 years. And I really don't think I'm alone in feeling like I wish I had known that I was allowed to ask questions, or I was allowed to follow what I wanted. I always thought there was like a formula that I had to, you graduate school and then you go to college because that's what you're supposed to do. And then in college, you figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life, because at the time, people were, still in the throes of, I spend 30 years in a corporate position or in a company, and then I get my gold watch and all is great in retirement. That's really not, I just knew everything I didn't want, which was everything they were telling me I should want, right? So I spent many years searching outside of myself for what would make me happy and what I could build a life around. And in this one moment of pulling open my mailbox and finding that postcard, it was like everything flashed before my eyes and everything felt like nothing. And I've always known there was more for me. I hated being in the jobs that I had taken, and I hated doing, things that I was supposed to do. And I didn't really have the role model of someone who, started working right out of college and continued until their retirement. I didn't have that, but the world, I felt, was telling me I needed that. I came from a family of out-of-the-box thinkers and entrepreneurs who, I couldn't even tell you what my father did when I was growing up. I hated when people asked me that question because I had no idea. But he did this and he did that and he did a few different other things, but nobody told me, nobody imparted those lessons to me. So that's really why I stepped into the coaching world, because I want to be the support for people the way I would have liked to have had, right? And I think that's a lot of us. And so anyway, in one of the themes that keeps coming back to me is this theme of acceptance, right? And what exactly does acceptance mean? So acceptance is really the act of recognizing and embracing reality or circumstances or situations, right? It's about looking at it, at whatever we're seeking to accept in the moment. So, let's take something small like your life, right? Okay. So for me, in that moment, I had a choice. I'm looking at this postcard and everything's flooding through my head. Oh my gosh, I can't go to this. How, I'm such a failure. I haven't done, I've done so many different things, and I'm now divorced and I have 2 young children, and I'm going to show up at this high school reunion and everybody's going to be CEOs, princesses, and kings, right? It wasn't obviously real, but it felt real at the time. And I felt like I couldn't measure up. So over the course of the next couple of weeks, every time I saw that thing, I would, I'm surprised I didn't throw it out. But, part of me really wanted to go and kind of see what people were doing. But I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to be judged. But mostly I was judging myself. And so in this time, I learned that I needed to start, the only way I could move forward was to start accepting things. And so for me, stepping back and like looking at my life as if it wasn't mine, if that makes any sense, really gave me an opportunity to kind of be more factual about what I was looking at. And I find that this also helps when things get a little overwhelming. If you have too much on your plate in one moment, just taking a moment and stepping back and looking at what the facts are. So here I was, how old was I? 38, I guess. And I had 2 young children. Yes, I was twice divorced, but I was a single parent, but I was living in a place that made me happy. I never actually thought I would live there, but I was living in a state that, in an area that I was happy in, and my kids were happy. And, had I made some choices that maybe on hindsight I would have made differently? Sure. But overall, as I started to look at the why of where I ended up, or the how of where I ended up, it was allowing me to say, you know what? I love this aspect. Like, I loved my house. I had a cute little house with a nice stone porch, and, I accepted that because I liked it. But I also had, circumstances that I didn't like. But without accepting them for what they were, I couldn't really move on from them. And I realized this in the time that, it was more about reframing the situation than it was fighting it. One of my favorite sayings, and if you've seen any of my other sessions with you, I use it a lot, is you can't put toothpaste back in a tube. Right? So, and what that means is you can't change it. You can't go back and make it different. But you can go forward and make it different. So part of that is recognizing that, yeah, I did the best I could at the time, and I could have if I had made a different choice, things may have come out differently, but I didn't. So just say, okay, it is. And then move yourself forward. Knowing what it is in the moment, how can I change this for the better? How can I make it so that I can move on and stop resisting? Because the pain of change, and I think it was the Buddha, that said this, the pain of change is not in change itself, but it's in the resistance to change. I probably butchered that, but the 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 sentiment is the same, right? It's the fear of the change. It's the resisting. It's the harder you pull against it, the harder it is, and the more painful it is for you, or for me, or for us. But if you can just accept things where you are, that almost brings up a level that you can stand on. And then you can figure out rationally how to move forward and what you like about it and what you don't like about it. So acceptance does not, and let me say this in as many ways as I can, acceptance is not condoning. Acceptance is not agreeing with. Acceptance is definitely not being, thinking it's a positive thing, or resignation. It is definitely not any of those things. Acceptance is merely recognizing where things are. And when I use the word embracing them, I don't mean it has to be a positive embrace. It's just a neutral embrace. Acceptance is purely neutral unless you give it a different meaning. So acknowledging where you are, that's the start, right? Looking around, being aware, because awareness, you need to have awareness in order to be able to acknowledge, then in order to be able to accept, right? So it's looking at it from both sides, both the internal side and whatever's happening externally. And it requires some honesty, right? Really looking at things for what they are objectively, as if you were looking through a TV screen or for somebody else, but being able to take that pause and have that, and then reframing it. And it's reframing it against the resistance, against fighting against it, right? That's about the meaning that we try and give it. But what if we just put that aside for a moment, because you can always pick it up again, and just look at it purely factual, purely neutral. It's raining outside. Not, oh my God, it's raining outside, now my hair is ruined. It's raining outside. There's no meaning, there's no judgment, right? And it also, when you start to accept things, emotions certainly around the more challenging situations, or the more, dare I say, negative situations. Like, look, I was twice divorced at this time, right? So I was only 20 years out of out of high school, and I was going to go back there. I was certain everybody had their perfect life, and they had their picket fence and their 2.5 children, and they had their Mercedes in their garage and their pool out back. Like, I was convincing myself. And then here I am showing up with, a trail of ex-husbands and 2 young children. Nobody else could possibly relate to that, could they? I'm kidding, right? But it does, learning to accept that brings up emotions about it. So that's part of the awareness and the acknowledgement. I was feeling shame, and I needed to allow that to come up, and I needed to be able to label that and just let it go off to the side. I can always pick it up, right? It's mine. It's always going to kind of be there if I want it to, but that's a choice I have. I don't have to choose to pick it up. And in that, by giving yourself the permission to see it and put it down, and know that if you choose to at a later date pick it up again, that's so compassionate, self-compassionate. And that's really what we need when we're getting into acceptance. And acceptance is by far the first step to being able to make anything different. If you don't like where you are today, that has to do with choices that you made days before. So that's fine. That's the way the world works. Why does it have to be a judgment? It just is. Right? I feel like I should start singing Kumbaya or something. I'm sorry. But having that compassion with ourselves and having the strength, because as I'm here talking to you, what's coming up for me is that having that self-compassion and being gentle with yourself and recognizing your emotions and letting them go through, that takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of strength. So it's not, it might sound soft, but it's not. It's the sign of someone who has a lot of resilience and the sign of someone who has a lot of inner strength. And you know what? Recognizing when you're able to do that and accepting whatever's happening in the moment should be applauded. And we should give ourselves a pat on the back because we do have that inner fortitude, right? Acceptance often too requires letting go of certain stories, certain attachments, and definitely expectations. Because part of that's all wrapped up in how we feel about something. And if you want it to change, you have to kind of untangle all that stuff. It's like a big bowl of spaghetti, right? You want to lay each noodle out, and neatly on the table. But acceptance also requires adaptability. And that's flexibility and the recognition that change is a natural part of things, right? You're not resigning yourself to anything by accepting. You are just recognizing, not resigning, but recognizing that things are the way they are and that you have a choice. That's the beauty of being human. We always have choice. Whether we're choosing or not is a choice, and it's up to us. But we always have that. And acceptance also requires freedom from judgment. And as I've mentioned before, like it just is. It's not good. It's not bad. It's not hot. It's not cold. It just is. And that takes practice. And I challenge you to start trying to practice on things, baby steps, right? Accept the weather. There's nothing you can do about it. So how do you look, it's a beautiful day out. I'm accepting that it's a beautiful day out. What's my choice? What am I going to do with this? It's a rainy day. It's a stormy day. It's not it's not a wonderful day, but what's my choice? Like asking yourself, these are like muscles that you build towards change and towards having the life that you want. Because ultimately, once you hit that point of acceptance, you'll know that because a sense of peace and serenity around whatever topic that is will be present. And it may be so subtle that you don't notice it unless you're purposely trying to stay aware of it. So I hope that kind of gives you a good sense of what acceptance is. And I know that there's a number of questions that people often have around it, right? For me, acceptance is creating that starting point, right? It's like a timeline. And it could go on forever, but at some point you just have to pick a place to start. It doesn't help to rehash things and to mull around the emotion of whatever it was that you want to change. It's just you have to put kind of the gauntlet down and say, all right, we're starting here, but then you need to know where here is, and that's the neutral acceptance, right? This is reality. This is what here's where we're starting. We're starting from this point in our day, this point in our life, this point in my relationship, this point as a parent. We people they don't wake up. We don't wake up every day and think, how can I screw up my life today? We don't wake up and think, what negative thing can I accomplish today? Or how can I affect somebody's life in a bad way? That's not a human thing. So first I want to say, cut yourself some slack. Stop treating my friends like that. And I do it too. On a, you know, every day is a work in progress for us. We're human, right? So recognize that, and just take it from that moment. Understand what moment it is you're taking it from, because how can you decide where to go if you don't know from where you're starting? Right? I want to go to San Diego, but I don't know where I am. So how do I know what direction to drive in? It's the same principle. You want something to change, you want more, you want different, you need to know then what, from where. So you need to know, you need to be accepting and aware of where you are today. Now, do you have to accept to move forward? No, but it does make things so much easier. You have to be aware. That's a given. You must be aware of where you are starting from. But if you don't offer yourself the compassionate acceptance of where you are, that resistance is where the pain is. That's what the Buddha was talking about with, you know, the pain and change comes from the resistance, not from the change itself. Don't do that to yourself. Don't do that to my friend, right? We're all friends here. Treat yourself the same, if not better, than you would treat others. And it's not a common human trait, right? Most people would put themselves aside and would take the punishment to save their friend, or would put themselves aside and, you know, and help this other person or cheerlead this other person because they need that. And it's okay. It's just me. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not okay. You're worthy. You matter. And you deserve it. Right? So people struggle with this idea of self-acceptance because we spend so much time, I don't know where we pick this up. You know, I guess we pick it up when we're young, but, you know, we spend so much time not being self-compassionate and not being positive towards us. You know, little kids, they're so cute. They're like run around and they're like, oh, I just love this about myself. And people are like, no, don't say that. That's too boastful. Or, but why? Nobody knows me better than me. Nobody knows you better than you. So if I tell you that I'm, you know, that I'm a compassionate person who cares so much about helping others realize their best self, why wouldn't you believe it? If I told you that I spend my day trying to make everybody's life terrible, why wouldn't you believe it? Because nobody knows me better than me. You don't know me as well as I know me. Even those in my house don't know me as well as I know me. So showing up for ourselves and offering ourselves that compassion and that self-acceptance helps us to get to a point where we can accept other things in our lives at the moment. And that's our jumping off point for change. Acceptance can be a challenge when you don't necessarily agree with things. But again, remember, acceptance has nothing to do with agreeing. It's like forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about the other person. Forgiveness is for you. Acceptance isn't necessarily about the other person either. It's for you to make your experience better. You know, your kid, like your child, you're in the grocery store, your 3-year-old wants something that you've told them no, and they throw themselves on the floor and they start kicking and screaming and having a big tantrum. in the middle of this grocery store. How do you react? Me, I probably get upset, bring the kid out into the car, but oftentimes I think it's an opportunity for us to just accept the situation as it is, and then be able to look at it rationally. Look, I have a couple of choices. I can pick them up and drag them out by their arm. I can yell at them. I can quietly get down on their level and try and talk to them. I can, enlist the help of somebody else. I mean, the choices are endless, but you can't fight it because it makes it worse. So it's accepting and what's the word I'm looking for? Understanding that it's a challenging moment and that you're doing the best you can with the resources you have at that time. Because that's what we do. That's how we conduct our life. So anyway, I could probably go on forever. I just think that learning to accept ourselves, accept our circumstance, accept our relationships, our jobs, our environment, our families, they're challenging, but that's the only way you can affect any change. And accepting has to come from within, and understand that only you have the power to change certain things. You can't change other people. You can't change a circumstance, but you can change your response to it. And Wayne Dyer, I'll leave you with this. Wayne Dyer said, change the way you look at things, and things you look at will change. And it's so, so true. I have a comment here. It says, sometimes my boss will ask me to cover someone else's work. Ooh, I don't agree with it, but I do it anyways. Then I get resentful. How can I accept this? That's an excellent question. And it is a challenging spot to be in, and you're not alone. First, let me say that you're not alone. It happens with the group projects at work, in school, it happens at work. And perhaps the question is, how can you approach your boss and let them know that you do this, but that it's also creating the resentment. So you have a choice, right? You can accept, you can understand, like if you have to complete somebody's, let's say, reports all the time, then perhaps you just embrace them and you go to your boss and say, you know what, Sally, I oftentimes end up finishing Sally's reports. It would probably just be easier if I took them over. Or often you can offer to help train them or help them and say, hey, Sally, let me know if you need some assistance here, because I can, I have a great system. I'd be happy to share it with you. Because there's an underlying reason, and it's understanding what that is. But when you just recognize where things are at, that you are always taking on this other person's work, now you can look at it objectively. And you can say to that person or to the boss or just to yourself for the situation, here's what happens. Every 30th of the month, when the end of the month is due the next day, I end up having to do all of the reporting on that. And that's frustrating. So maybe you get ahead of it. And the week before, you approach the person or you approach the boss and say, I think I'm going to have a really busy end of the month. Would you like me to jump in now so I can plan ahead? And it's being able to kind of guide yourself through this so that you don't feel put upon. It's about how you're looking at it. If you're always looking at it like it's somebody else's job and that it's taking away from time, maybe offer them the choice, right? Thank you, Mr. Boss. I'm happy to help with these reports again this month, but I just want to set this up that don't expect that I'm going to have my other commitment done on time, because I can't do both. And it is something that isn't within your power. And you have to think through the consequences. I don't know the players, but the more you allow it to happen without the boundaries being set there, the more they're going to do it. So the choice here is finding a way around that so that you can still honor that and not push back too hard on it by maybe starting earlier than you would normally get it, or offering the boss the opportunity to understand that you're not going to be able to get your stuff done, or perhaps maybe that you can swap responsibilities, or the acceptance is in seeing what the situation is. Hard to say when you don't know all the players and you don't know what's happening, but I hope that gave you some food for thought. Anyway, we are past our time, and I'm thrilled that you joined me today, and I will be here next Thursday. And again, this is Let's Coach 2023, brought to you through Life Coach University. Feel free to send an email to hello@Life Coach University if you have pressing questions between now and one of our next sessions. Bring any question to the sessions. It doesn't have to relate to the topic. We are happy to coach you through Q&A, through voice to voice. I so appreciate you guys, and I will see you next time. Have a good one. Thank you.